Hello and welcome again. In this video, I will explain the difference between nominal and real GDP, gross domestic product. The idea is actually quite simple. Um, the value of goods and services that we produce within our economy, and this is the concept that we'll be discussing in class at length, um, the value can go up for two reasons. Reason number one, we actually produce more goods and services, so we become richer as a nation. Reason number two, stuff gets more expensive. A perfect example of that would be Russia, or for that matter, every former Soviet republic in early 1990s when Soviet Union broke up. Production went down by as much as 30%. The entire what used to be Soviet Union was in deep, deep economic crisis. Yet GDP actually went up. Well, why is that? Well, the answer is simple. Inflation. Everything became so much more expensive. Inflation in Russia, and I'm old enough to actually remember that, reached about 3,000% a year. So, in normal circumstances, both things actually happen. Yes, we do start producing more, and yes, stuff does become more expensive. So, how do we tell which is which? Well, there is a little trick here. So, let's say that we have a very, very simple little economy. And we only have 2 years, let's say 2019 and 2020. And let's say the only two goods that we produce are pizzas and beers. And let's say that in 2019, we produced 10 pizzas worth $10 each, and we produced 10 boxes of beer worth $15 each. In 2020, we produced, let's say, I'm just making these numbers up, 12 pizzas for $12 each, and we produced 11 boxes of beer at $16 each. So, what is the nominal GDP? Well, the nominal GDP for 2019 is simply we add up the values. So here we have $100 worth of pizzas, and we have $150 worth of beers. So the nominal GDP in 2019 will be $250. Now in 2020, we have 12 times 12 is 144, if I'm not mistaken, and 11 times 16 is 176. So adding them both up, we will have what? 320. Am I correct? Yeah, I think it's 320. Let me just grab my calculator to make sure that I'm not missing something. So 144 plus 176, yeah, 320. Oh, I'll be. My brain still works, surprisingly. So our GDP went up. Did it go up because we have started producing more, or did it go up because stuff became more expensive? You can absolutely see that both things happened at the same time. So comparing these two numbers really doesn't tell us much of a story. So economists came up with a workaround of how to compute what we call the real GDP, because again, this number by itself does not really mean a lot. So I am going to compute real GDP for 2020. And that will be equal to 12 times 10 plus 11 times 15. So I'll use a different color. 10, 11 times 15. See what I'm doing here. I am keeping my prices constant. I am not allowing my prices to change at all. So now, whatever number I come up with here, the increase from 250 will be driven purely by production, by more pizzas and more beer that we produce, not because the prices have changed. So this number will be 120 plus, plus that will be 165, which is 285. Comparing these two numbers now makes sense. We are no longer comparing apples to oranges, we are comparing apples to apples. So I can see that my GDP growth went from 250, my GDP rather, not growth, from 250 to 285. Now, the last step here is to compute what we call the GDP deflator. We know that this number is inflated because of prices. We need to deflate it. So I don't need the raw numbers anymore. I only need my nominal and real GDP. So GDP deflator, I'll use a black color, has a bit more contrast. Nominal divided by real times 100. In our little example here, what is equal to? It's nominal, 320, divided by real, 285, times 100. This, unfortunately, I cannot do in my head, so I do need a calculator. Apologies for a slight delay. So 320 divided by 285 times 100, and I get 112.28. Now, it's always important to know how to get the number, but what is more important, much more important actually, is to know what the heck do we do with the number, how do we interpret it. The interpretation is this. The prices of the goods that we have produced from 2019 to 2020, on average, have gone up by 12.28%. That is the interpretation. So it's the average rate of growth of prices of the goods that we have produced. Now, you'd say, well, I hope this is reasonably straightforward. How many of you have heard of the term GDP deflator before watching this video? The answer probably is not many, if anyone. I mean, I often had classes where I had 20, 25 students, and no one has heard about this. What you hear about is consumer price index and inflation. This is something that I will talk about in the next video. What is the difference? Inflation is the change in prices of the goods that we consume. GDP deflator is the change in prices of the goods that we produce. Notice the difference. If we are a completely isolated economy, and New Zealand is way on, well on the way there, judging by the latest trends, the two will be exactly the same. But in reality, it's not true. For example, this jersey is, well, I cannot see, but it's no doubt it has been made in China. Therefore, the change in price of this jersey will not contribute to New Zealand's GDP deflator, but it will contribute to the inflation rate. And on that note, I will end this video, and in the next one, we will talk about inflation.